Have you ever thought of someone moments before they called? Or dreamt of a place you've never been, only to find yourself standing there years later? These aren't coincidences. They're glimpses into the hidden architecture of reality. Moments when the boundary between your mind and the universe briefly dissolves. Some people experience these moments so frequently that they appear to predict the future. But they're not psychics or time travelers. They've simply stumbled upon what Carl Jung called synchronicity, where the inner world of consciousness meets the outer world of matter in ways that defy conventional understanding. Before we continue, if you enjoy unraveling hidden truths and uncovering the forces that shape our world, make sure to click that subscribe button. Your support allows us to continue bringing you the insights that truly challenge how we think. Now let's go deeper. In 1932, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung sat across from a patient who was describing a dream about a golden scarab beetle. As she spoke, Jung heard a tapping at his window. When he opened it, a scarabaeid beetle, the closest thing to a scarab found in Switzerland, flew into the room. Jung caught it and handed it to his patient, saying, "Here is your scarab." This moment transformed Jung's understanding of reality. He had witnessed something that couldn't be explained by cause and effect, something he would later call synchronicity. A meaningful coincidence where events connect through significance rather than causality. But this wasn't just an isolated curiosity. Jung believed he had discovered a fundamental principle of how consciousness interacts with the physical world. Conventional science tells us that reality operates like a perfect machine, predictable, deterministic, with every effect traceable to a physical cause. In this worldview, meaningful coincidences are just statistical inevitabilities, random noise in an indifferent universe. But this explanation feels hollow when we experience these moments ourselves. The mathematician in us says coincidence, but something deeper whispers connection. Jung proposed something radical. What if meaning itself is a fundamental organizing principle of the universe, as real and powerful as causality? What if our minds and the material world aren't separate domains but aspects of a unified reality that occasionally reveals itself through these cracks in our ordinary perception? This isn't just philosophical speculation. Quantum physics has demonstrated that at the subatomic level, reality behaves in ways that defy our common sense understanding. Particles can be entangled across vast distances, influencing each other instantaneously. The act of observation can collapse wave functions, suggesting consciousness itself may play a role in how reality manifests. As the physicist John Wheeler put it, we are participators in bringing into being not only the near and here but the far away and long ago. Think about this for a moment. If consciousness can influence quantum events, and these events cascade upward to affect our macroscopic world, then the boundary between mind and matter may be far more permeable than we've been led to believe. But synchronicity goes beyond mere quantum effects. Jung believed these meaningful coincidences emerge from what he called the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of archetypal patterns and symbols that connects all human minds at a level beneath conscious awareness. When these archetypes are activated in our psyche, they can manifest not just in dreams and thoughts, but in external events that mirror our internal state. This brings us to a crucial insight. Those who frequently experience synchronicities aren't simply lucky observers. They've developed a particular relationship with their unconscious mind. They've learned to pay attention to dreams, intuitions, and symbolic patterns that most people filter out as meaningless. They've cultivated what Jung called an individuation process, a journey towards psychological wholeness that integrates the conscious and unconscious aspects of the self. Consider Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who collaborated with Jung. Pauli was known for the Pauli effect, the uncanny tendency for experimental equipment to break down in his presence. This wasn't just bad luck. Jung saw it as a manifestation of Pauli's unresolved psychological conflicts projecting into the physical world, synchronicity expressing inner turmoil through external chaos. Or take the case of Paul Kammer, the Austrian biologist who documented hundreds of meaningful coincidences in his book Das Gesetz der Serie, The Law of Seriality. Kammer proposed that coincidences cluster together just as similar organisms might share habitats in nature. He wasn't just cataloging curiosities. He was detecting patterns in reality that operate alongside causality. These patterns extend beyond individual experience. History itself seems to move in synchronistic waves, with parallel discoveries emerging simultaneously across different parts of the world. Calculus was developed independently by Newton and Leibniz. Evolution was conceived by both Darwin and Wallace. The telephone was patented by Bell and Gray on the same day. These aren't mere coincidences but expressions of what Jung might call the spirit of the times. Collective archetypal energies manifesting across multiple minds. What's truly fascinating is how these synchronistic patterns seem to accelerate during periods of cultural transformation. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Scientific Revolution, the Digital Age. Each of these epochs witnessed clusters of simultaneous breakthroughs that seemed to emerge from a shared unconscious current. Ideas that were in the air materialized simultaneously in multiple minds, as if reality itself were pushing toward a new expression through human consciousness. Arthur Koestler, in his landmark work, The Act of Creation, described how creative breakthroughs often occur through what he called bisociation, the connecting of previously unrelated matrices of thought. These moments of insight often feel like they come from beyond the individual, as if the creator were a vessel for something larger. Mozart described his compositions as arriving fully formed in his mind. Einstein spoke of his theories as discoveries rather than inventions. The boundaries between creation and discovery blur at the edges of consciousness. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. The people who seem most attuned to synchronicities, those apparent future predictors, share a common characteristic. They live at the intersection of logic and intuition. They don't reject rational thought, but they don't worship it either. They've learned to navigate by both the map of reason and the compass of meaning. James Lovelock, who formulated the Gaia hypothesis, describes how his groundbreaking insight came not through linear deduction, but through a sudden intuitive leap while walking in the countryside. Jonas Salk, who developed the polio vaccine, attributed his breakthrough to cultivating intuitive awareness. Even Einstein claimed his theories emerged not from pure calculation but from intuitive jumps that he later verified mathematically. These individuals aren't mystics abandoning reason. They're integrators who recognize that consciousness itself may be a detective tool for probing reality's deepest patterns. They understand something most of us have forgotten. That meaning isn't just something we project onto the world. It may be something we detect within it. But there's something deeper here. Something that challenges our fundamental understanding of time itself. Jung believed that synchronicities reveal what he called the unus mundus, or one world, a unitary reality beneath the apparent separation of psyche and matter. In this unified field, time may not flow in the linear fashion we experience in everyday life. Past, present, and future may coexist in a more complex relationship than our ordinary consciousness can grasp. The physicist David Bohm proposed a similar concept with his theory of implicate order, a deeper level of reality where everything is enfolded within everything else. In this view, what we experience as separate events in space and time are actually projections from a more fundamental level of reality where separation doesn't exist. Synchronicities, then, might be moments when this deeper order briefly reveals itself through the veil of ordinary consciousness. This perspective helps explain why some people seem to have precognitive experiences, dreams or intuitions that later materialize in waking life. They may not be seeing the future in a supernatural sense. Rather, they may be experiencing a more fluid relationship with time, one that occasionally allows glimpses of what we conventionally call the future, but which may actually be an aspect of an eternal present. Consider the work of Dean Radin, a scientist who has conducted rigorous experiments on presentiment, the body's apparent ability to respond to stimuli seconds before they occur. His research suggests that our physiological systems may react to future events before they happen, as if our bodies exist in a slightly different temporal framework than our conscious minds. This isn't magic. It's a challenge to our limited conception of how consciousness relates to time. Or consider the research of psychiatrist Ian Stevenson, who documented thousands of cases of children with detailed memories of past lives. While conventional science struggles to explain these cases, they become more comprehensible if we consider that consciousness may not be as tightly bound to linear time as we assume. This challenges our modern assumption that the universe is fundamentally meaningless, with significance existing only in human minds. What if meaning is as real as matter? What if consciousness isn't an accidental byproduct of brain chemistry, but a fundamental aspect of reality that can resonate with patterns in the external world? The implications are profound. When Jung proposed synchronicity, he wasn't just offering a psychological curiosity. He was suggesting an expanded science, one that could accommodate both causality and acausality, both determinism and meaning, both matter and mind. He was pointing toward what physicist David Bohm would later call the implicate order, a deeper level of reality where everything is enfolded within everything else. This expanded view of science is beginning to emerge in various fields. Systems theory recognizes that complex systems can't be understood through reductionism alone. They exhibit emergent properties that transcend their components. Chaos theory has revealed how deterministic systems can produce unpredictable outcomes, blurring the line between order and randomness. Information theory suggests that information itself may be as fundamental to reality as energy and matter. Even conventional physics has moved away from the rigid determinism of the Newtonian era. Quantum field theory presents a world of probabilities rather than certainties, of relationships rather than isolated objects. The observer effect in quantum mechanics suggests that consciousness itself may play a role in how reality manifests. As physicist John Archibald Wheeler put it, the universe and the observer exist as a pair. Reality may be participatory at its core, but perhaps the most revolutionary implication comes from a reconsideration of meaning itself. Western thought has long assumed a split between objective, physical reality and subjective human experience. In this view, meaning is something we project onto an inherently meaningless universe. But what if this division is itself an artifact of our limited perspective? What if meaning is intrinsic to reality, as fundamental as mass or charge? The anthropologist Gregory Bateson argued that mind is not confined to individual brains but extends throughout living systems as patterns of information. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead proposed that experience, in some form, goes all the way down to the most fundamental levels of reality. These perspectives suggest that the capacity to register significance, to participate in meaning, may be a basic feature of existence rather than a peculiarity of human consciousness. This brings us to the most challenging question. If synchronicity is real, can it be cultivated? Can we become more like those people who seem to navigate by meaningful coincidence, who appear to predict the future through their attunement to hidden patterns? Jung believed we could. The first step is paying attention to dreams, intuitions, and coincidences that conventional thinking would dismiss. The second step is amplifying awareness of archetypal patterns, universal symbols and narratives that recur across cultures and individuals. The third step is developing what Jung called active imagination, a form of waking engagement with unconscious material that strengthens the bridge between inner and outer worlds. But there's a paradox here. You can't force synchronicity. The more desperately you seek meaningful coincidences, the more elusive they become. They emerge most readily when you hold a both/and perspective, maintaining rational awareness while remaining open to acausal connections. There's a delicate balance between seeking meaning and allowing it to find you. This balance points to a deeper truth. Synchronicity flourishes at thresholds, those liminal spaces between states of consciousness, between life transitions, between order and chaos. The French anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss noted that tribal shamans operated at the boundaries between nature and culture. Similarly, those most attuned to synchronicity often live at the edges of conventional understanding, where rigid categories begin to dissolve. Traditional cultures recognized this liminal quality. The ancient Greeks consulted the oracle at Delphi, who entered altered states to access patterns beyond ordinary perception. Indigenous shamans worldwide use ritual and plant medicines to temporarily dissolve the boundaries of conventional consciousness. Even modern creative geniuses often report working at the edge of consciousness, not fully rational but not completely surrendered to the unconscious either. This threshold awareness isn't mystical indulgence, but a practical recognition of consciousness's full spectrum. It's about expanding our epistemology, our way of knowing, beyond the narrow confines of analytical reason to include intuition, embodied knowledge, and symbolic understanding. It's about recognizing that different levels of reality may require different modes of perception. Now consider this unsettling possibility. What if these threshold people, art just detecting existing patterns but participating in their creation? What if consciousness itself is a creative force in the universe, constantly engaged in a dialogue with matter through the language of meaning? The physicist John Wheeler proposed the concept of the participatory universe, suggesting that the act of observation is not passive but participatory. We are, he wrote, in some strange sense, both the actors and spectators in the cosmic drama. When we observe reality, we aren't just receiving information, we're participating in its manifestation. This idea has gained surprising support from quantum mechanics. The delayed choice quantum eraser experiments suggest that observations made in the present can influence events that have already occurred in the past. The physicist Pascual Jordan went so far as to say that observations not only disturb what is to be measured, they produce it. If consciousness participates in reality's manifestation at the quantum level, and if these effects can propagate upward to influence macroscopic events, then the line between predicting the future and participating in its emergence becomes blurred. Those who seem most prescient may simply be more aware of how their consciousness already interpenetrates with the fabric of reality. This raises a profound question about those who seem to predict the future. What if they're not predicting it but participating in its emergence? What if their heightened awareness of meaning allows them to engage more directly with reality's unfolding patterns? Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's closest collaborator, documented cases where dreams predicted future events with uncanny accuracy. But she noted something crucial. These predictive dreams often contained elements that could not have been known by any ordinary means. They weren't just extrapolating from existing information. They were tapping into something that transcended conventional boundaries of time and space. This suggests something revolutionary. Consciousness may not be confined to the present moment. It may extend tentatively into past and future, not through supernatural powers but through participation in what physicists call non-locality. The understanding that at the quantum level, separation in space and time is not as absolute as it appears in our everyday experience. The physician and researcher Larry Dossey has collected thousands of cases of what he calls premonitions, instances where individuals receive information about future events through dreams, intuitions, or bodily sensations. What's remarkable is how often these premonitions involve life-threatening situations, as if consciousness has evolved a capacity to reach across time when survival is at stake. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This communion isn't available to everyone equally. It requires psychological integration, a harmonizing of conscious and unconscious that most people never achieve. It demands tolerance for ambiguity and paradox in a culture that craves certainty. It necessitates vulnerability in a world that rewards armor. The capacity for synchronistic awareness isn't distributed randomly. It emerges in those who have often been wounded and have transformed their wounds into windows, apertures through which they can perceive connections that others miss. Jung himself underwent a profound psychological crisis that he called his confrontation with the unconscious. It was only through this descent that he discovered the principles that would define his most important work. This pattern recurs across cultures and traditions. Shamanic initiation typically involves a symbolic death and rebirth. The hero's journey described by Joseph Campbell requires a descent into the underworld before transformation can occur. Even in modern contexts, many who develop heightened intuitive or synchronistic awareness report that it emerged following periods of crisis or profound disorientation. These wounded healers develop a particular relationship with reality. Having experienced the dissolution of their previous understanding, they become more permeable to information that exists beyond conventional categories. They learn to navigate by different stars. Their wounds become apertures through which they perceive connections invisible to others. But this permeability comes with challenges. Those most attuned to synchronicity often struggle to function in conventional frameworks. They may appear distracted when they're actually attending to subtle patterns others miss. They may seem to leap to conclusions that later prove accurate but can't explain their reasoning through linear logic. They live at the edges of consensus reality, where the maps we use to navigate existence begin to fray. This marginality explains why many with synchronistic awareness throughout history have been both revered and persecuted. Ancient cultures recognized them as seers, prophets, or oracles. Modern society tends to pathologize them as delusional, magical thinkers, or simply too sensitive. Yet their heightened permeability to meaning may represent not a regression to primitive thinking but an evolution toward a more complex relationship with reality. The most provocative implication is this: those who seem to predict the future may simply be more aware of how they're already participating in its creation. They've recognized that consciousness doesn't just observe reality, it communes with it. This recognition doesn't grant supernatural powers. It doesn't allow perfect prediction or control of future events, but it does facilitate a different relationship with time and possibility. One that's more fluid, more resonant with meaning, more attuned to the patterns that connect moments across the conventional boundaries of past, present, and future. So if some people seem to predict the future through their attunement to synchronicity, does this mean we're all potential prophets? Not exactly, but it does suggest that our conventional understanding of consciousness, time, and reality may be far too limited. It implies that while we may never control synchronicity, we can create conditions that allow it to flourish. These conditions include psychological integration, attention to symbolic patterns, comfort with uncertainty, and willingness to dwell at thresholds. They involve recognizing that meaning isn't just a human construct but may be intrinsic to reality itself, a fundamental organizing principle alongside causality. Perhaps most importantly, synchronicity reminds us that the boundary between mind and world is not as impermeable as we've been taught. Consciousness doesn't just inhabit reality, it participates in it. And in moments of synchronicity, we glimpse this participation directly. The next time you experience a meaningful coincidence, a thought that manifests in the external world, a dream that foreshadows a future event, a pattern that seems too significant to be random, remember, you may be witnessing not a glitch in reality's matrix but a glimpse of its deeper architecture. You may be experiencing not an exception to how the world works but a revelation of how it works at levels our conventional science is only beginning to understand. In a world increasingly dominated by algorithmic thinking and mechanical causality, synchronicity offers a necessary counterbalance, a reminder that meaning and connection operate alongside prediction and control as organizing principles of existence. It suggests that the universe is not merely a machine to be manipulated but a text to be read, a conversation to be joined, a dance to be danced. This doesn't mean abandoning reason or surrendering to superstition. It means expanding our conception of reason itself to include the recognition of patterns that transcend conventional boundaries. It means developing what the philosopher Ken Wilber calls vision logic, a mode of understanding that integrates analytical precision with synthetic awareness, that perceives both the parts and the meaningful wholes simultaneously. The people who seem to predict the future through synchronicity have cultivated this integration. They've learned to navigate by both the stars of reason and the compass of meaning. They've recognized that consciousness itself may be a resonant field that extends beyond the boundaries of individual brains and present moments, a field that participates in reality's unfolding rather than merely observing it. As our global challenges grow increasingly complex, we may need this expanded awareness more than ever. The problems we face, climate change, technological disruption, social fragmentation, cannot be addressed through linear causality alone. They require us to perceive patterns across vast scales of time and space, to recognize connections between seemingly unrelated domains, to attune ourselves to the meaning that emerges from complexity itself. Jung's synchronicity offers not an escape from reason but an expansion of it, an invitation to develop a more complete relationship with reality. It suggests that those moments when meaning seems to break through the veil of ordinary perception aren't anomalies to be dismissed but glimpses of a more comprehensive understanding waiting to be born. If this exploration of synchronicity and the nature of consciousness has made you think, challenged your assumptions, and sparked a deeper curiosity about reality itself, then make sure to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with those who need to hear this truth. The boundary between mind and matter may be more permeable than we sought, and in that permeability lies both mystery and meaning.